Greetings, this is Mpoki Thompson with The Citizen. Today we have the presence of the Managing Director of the IFC, International Finance Corporation, Mr. Makhtar Diop. Makhtar, welcome to Tanzania. You've had a fruitful engagement with the government, President Samia, the Finance Minister, and also other cabinet ministers. I'm quite sure Tanzanians would like to know basically what to expect from your visit. So just in a nutshell, what are the major outcomes that will come from your first visit to Tanzania as the IFC director?
The first message is that we are here and we will do much more. The discussion with the authority, with Madam President, were extremely fruitful, and there were a full convergence of view on what the sectors that need to be developed to be able to keep the growth path of Tanzania. Tanzania has been pretty resilient during this shock of COVID-19, 4.5% growth, deficit which has been contained, inflation which are under 5%, and a debt which is not too high. So we are in a situation where there is a good macroeconomic condition for the private sector to come. So we discussed a number of things, how to continue working on improving the business climate so that you can attract even more investors, but also looked at specific sectors. We talked about the health sector. We talked about transportation. We talked about blue economy. We talked about how to have a much more inclusive growth by increasing the financing for women. IFC have a very interesting financing currently for women, particularly those who are working in small and medium enterprises, and to give them more working capital, more resources for them to increase their income.
Okay, so over 30 billion was made as a commitment by the IFC in the year 2021. How much of that has been earmarked for Tanzania specifically?
We have been last year around $280 million of financing. We are ramping up because we are looking at new opportunities, and we would like to be. We have a stock of 280, and we have done around $100 million last year. So we'll be ramping up in the coming years, and we would like to be able to double it, to triple it, and that's looking at investment opportunities. And for that, it's clear that continue working on the business climate will be a very important factor to attract more investors. But also for us, we are sending in the coming month, two large missions. We will be doing some project identification to discuss with some sponsors who are interested in investing in the sectors that we discussed with Madam President, and that will be giving us an opportunity to increase significantly our portfolio. Already, our financing with the banking sector has increased and will be increasing very shortly with the issuance of new bonds.
Okay, so we saw the Bank of Tanzania in 2021 introduce a special fund, an amount of 1 trillion, targeting banks so that they can lower the interest rate to the private sector, specifically the agriculture sector. Now, the major concern for the other players beyond agriculture is the high interest rates when it comes to accessing loans. What plans are currently in place, and how soon do you think the entire ecosystem of the private sector will be able to access loans at a very fair interest rate?
The factors which are affecting interest rate are many. One of them is the size of the deficit, because the size of the deficit links the government to borrow more on the market, and that is crowding out some resources for the private sector and pushing an interest rate up. So the more you are controlling your fiscal deficit, the less pressure, the upward pressure you have on interest rate. The second one is competition in the banking sector. The more you have competition in the banking sector, the more you have a reduction of the premium which is attached to investment that banks are making. The third element is reducing the level of uncertainty, because when people are lending money and are putting a premium on the base interest rate, is to capture the uncertainty and the risk in the economy. So the more we reduce that risk, the more you will reduce that premium. So all these elements will contribute to reducing the interest rate in the country, and I think the government is working on all these fronts. When it comes to IFC, what we are doing is to provide more liquidity to banks, because sometimes banks are facing some liquidity constraints. We are also bringing more long-term resources. We are seeing a situation where there is a currency mismatch and a maturity mismatch. It's not unusual to see a situation where an investor has to buy a machine which has to be amortized over 20 years, but which has only access to a 5 years maturity credit. So that investor has to do a lot of revolving, which increases the cost of his investment. So bringing some long-term resources, particularly in local currency, will reduce the cost of financing to the investors, and therefore allow them to be able to generate more wealth.
Okay, so when we look at integrated regional trade, Tanzania recently just put forward its instruments in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. As the IFC, are there any opportunities that you have identified in terms of trade opportunities within the emblem of the AFCTA?
Absolutely. I think that is the big lesson of this crisis is that we need to strengthen the regional and sub-regional value chains. Africa doesn't trade enough. And who would be trading is the private sector. The private sector will be trading. So one of the things that we have done, for instance, to support that initiative is that we had trade financing. But most of the trade financing that was made available to banks was for people who were traded with entities outside the African continent. You want to export from Europe, you want to import from Europe, you have a trade financing provided by banks and with the support of IFC. We say it's not enough. And now we are launching an initiative that will be focusing specifically of trade financing within the continent. That will allow us people, the Tanzanian to export to Senegal and Senegalese to export to Tanzania and using the banking sector. Second thing, we need to continue having more specialization of economies. And if you want to build value chain and products which are competitive internationally, we require to have a scale, and to have scale, we need to have specialization. So we would like progressively to arrive at a point where one input will be produced in mass in one country and be part of the value chain in the continent and be feeding in the production of other product. But to do that with certainty, we need to remove all the non-tariff barriers that exist across country, so that if you want to drive your truck in very fast and be able to deliver your input from Tanzania to DRC or from DRC to Rwanda, you don't have any obstacle on the road. So all these elements are what we are looking into, and IFC is really pushing very hard for increasing the intra-Africa trade.
Okay, so what is the IFC's promise to the young creatives in Tanzania, the innovators, those who are trying to start their own businesses within the innovation space? What are you promising them? Because we know the challenges, which is of course access to finance, access to capital. So what is your plan for the innovation?
So IFC has been making it one of his priority to work with that demographics, because when we know that in many African countries, half of the population is less than 21 years old, you need to work with the youth and find products which are needed by them. So what IFC is doing today is to first both a lot of the technical assistance, help these people structure their company, help give them the best practice in the way you will be developing your business plan. And we have a whole part of IFC which is doing what we call advisory service. Secondly is to provide them capital which is needed for them to take the company to the next level. We're doing it so either directly, but we're doing it a lot through the banking sector, which have maybe more capillarity than we would have in a particular country to reach that demographic. Third, we are trying to enter also some areas where traditionally we are not investing, like the creative industry. We know that a lot of young people are in that space. So now we are starting to talk to youngsters, young people who are working in that space, and try to think about what are they need specifically. Is it buying some equipment, buying some computer, have some training, being able to build a business plan, and we are working on all these in addition to the financial resources that we are providing.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Diop, it's been a great dialogue and a lot has been promised, so expectations are quite high. You were with me, Mpoke Thompson. We were with the IFC Managing Director, Makhtar Diop, here in Tanzania, the capital, Dodoma. Until next time.